Hello, welcome to Planet America. I'm John Barron.
And I'm Licciardello.
This week, Donald Trump berates the Ukrainian president for risking World War III.
We're going to speak to the former US ambassador to Ukraine about diplomacy Trump style. It's been quite a week.
Usually, when foreign leaders meet with the American president at the White House, there's a cosy photo opportunity in front of the fire in the Oval Office. Increasingly, though, the press is allowed to ask some questions, and sometimes there are revealing moments, like last week when French President Emmanuel Macron pointedly corrected President Trump's claims about aid to Ukraine.
Just so you understand, Europe is loaning the money to Ukraine. They get their money back.
No, in fact, to be frank, we paid. We paid 60% of the total effort, and it was through, like the US, loans, guarantee, grants, and we provided real money, to be clear.
Mostly, though, it's lots of smiles, gifts, diplomatic niceties. Allies and enemies alike figured out a long time ago the way to get what you want out of Donald Trump is to heap praise upon him, play to his vanity, use words he understands like deal. And last week, Macron and British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer worked very hard to lay the groundwork for Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky for what was to be his first meeting with Trump since the American president called him a dictator and accused him of starting the war with Russia. That was all back when the US was negotiating this deal to take a chunk of Ukraine's mineral resources in return for their military assistance. And this meeting was supposed to culminate in the signing of that agreement. And for a while, all seemed well.
We had a little negotiation spat, but that worked out great. I think for both countries, I think for the world, actually, beyond both countries.
Ukraine has something that Donald Trump really wants: rare earth minerals and metals like graphite, titanium and lithium.
We have a lot of oil and gas, but we don't have a lot of the raw earth.
By which he means rare earth, although Trump did keep getting it wrong.
But we don't have raw earth.
Trump thinks that giving America the right to extract and exploit Ukraine's rare earth minerals is key to a peace deal and effectively a guarantee against another Russian invasion.
You know, we have security in a different form. We'll have workers there digging, taking the raw earth.
You're going to take it, at least get the name right. It's rare earth. Rare earth.
Either way, but Trump is seriously exaggerating the benefits of this deal, raw or rare, because the value of all the rare earth minerals in the world is about $15 billion a year. So let's say Ukraine does have 20% of the world's rare earths as claimed, then that's worth about $3 billion a year. And America might enjoy that windfall in about 18 years' time, because that's how long it takes the average mine to come online. And that's all assuming Ukraine even has access to all those rare earths, because Ukrainian think tanks estimate about 40% of Ukraine's mineral resources are currently in Russian-occupied territory. But that's what Trump has to say. What's Zelensky got to say, John?
Well, Zelensky said that the minerals agreement and even the prospect of European peacekeepers won't be enough to stop Putin from wanting to come back in and take all of Ukraine.
It's a very good start, very good, but it will not enough to stop this person.
And that was the first real note of disagreement. And usually that'd be the point where the media would be quietly ushered out the door of the Oval Office. But Trump kept taking more and more questions from reporters, including some truly embarrassing softballs like this one from the One American News Network.
What gave you the moral courage and conviction to step forward and lead that?
Well, I love this guy. Who are you with?
One American News, sir.
Well, that's why I like him.
Zelensky's expression suggests he's a little less of a fan. Meanwhile, Vice President J.D. Vance, who'd been sitting quietly to one side, was just itching to get in some Trump flattery of his own.
What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
And that was possibly the sliding door moment for Zelensky, who could have added his own effusive praise for Donald Trump, however insincere. But instead, he tried to explain Russia's history of breaking agreements, including ceasefires.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're the ones that kept them in there, JD. And that's pretty much where it all started to fall apart. Zelensky warned that while Russia threatens Ukraine and Europe now, he could very soon pose a threat to America itself. And that's the point at which Trump lost his cool.
But you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
Once Trump started to use that word dictate, surely no coincidence, the gloves came off. And the result was pretty astonishing.
You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Zelensky was repeatedly accused of not being sufficiently grateful to America. Trump pressed him to accept a ceasefire on any terms, and then Trump gave a particularly unconvincing answer to a reporter's question.
What if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia breaks peace talks? What do we do then? I understand that it's a heated conversation right now.
What are you saying?
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
What if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me.
And Trump was getting all wound up then. He went on a rant about the investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election and allegations of his campaign's collusion with the Russians. He made it seem like Putin was a victim just like him. And finally, after almost 50 minutes, Trump brought the whole bizarre spectacle to a close.
But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think? This is going to be great television, I will say that.
And it was great television, but terrible diplomacy. The minerals deal went unsigned. Zelensky was asked to leave the White House. But for what it's worth, Zelensky has been pretty grateful to America.
Ukraine is grateful to the United States for its overwhelming support. I came here to the United States to forward the word of thanks to the people of America.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Thank you for all these 575 days. Yes, and thanks to American people. I'd like to thank America and our partners for the support.
And there are montages out there with close to 100 times Zelensky said, "Thank you, America." But perhaps right now he's regretting he didn't suck up even more to Donald Trump.
Maybe. Just to elaborate on what you're saying there, a lot of this has been coming for some time. For months, in fact, Zelensky has been adamant the ceasefire is pointless without security guarantees because you can't trust Putin.
Повинні зрозуміти, що не буде просто ceasefire, а в Україні немає гарантій безпеки. Дивіться, так воно не буде.
And also for ages, Trump has been equally adamant that security guarantees aren't so important because Russia's not going to be invading Ukraine again anyway.
We'll be looking at that security. You're talking about general security for Ukraine later on. I don't think that's going to be a problem. There are a lot of people that want to do it. And I spoke with Russia about it. They didn't seem to have a problem with it. So I think they understand. They're not going back in. Once we do this, they're not going back in.
Meanwhile, Marco Rubio invented this argument that the economic deal is effectively a security guarantee anyway. In all but name.
They understand this. They also understand that this agreement that was supposed to be signed today was supposed to be an agreement that binds America economically to Ukraine, which to me, as I've explained, and I think the president alluded to today, is a security guarantee in its own way, because we're involved. It's now us. It's our interests.
So that's the background to all this. But the thing is, security guarantees are important for the peace deal. This is different. This is an economic deal they were there to sign. And Zelensky also wants this economic deal. Remember, it was his idea. Back in September, Zelensky pitched this minerals deal to Trump as a means of keeping him interested in Ukraine. He even got Lindsey Graham on board.
They're sitting on $1 trillion worth of minerals that could be good to our economy. So I want to keep helping our friends in Ukraine. We can win this. They need our help.
And it worked. Zelensky got his deal, and his office insisted on having this White House meeting before the signing. But why? especially given that minutes before the White House meeting, Zelensky was not talking about the economic deal. He was still going on to Democrats about how he wouldn't support a peace agreement without security arrangements for Ukraine. He was obsessed with these security arrangements. I think people forget that Zelensky has to answer to the Ukrainian people, and they're not happy right now. Only 39% of Ukrainians say they should negotiate an end to the war as soon as possible. And only 20% say the current peace talks are legitimate. And what the Ukrainian people want instead is they want security guarantees. Zelensky made exactly this point on Fox News straight after the blow-up.
This is so sensitive. You know, just a ceasefire without security guarantees, this is so sensitive for our people. I'm speaking like a president of a people who are in this struggle 3 years, and they just want to hear that America on our side and that America will stay with us, not with Russians, with us. It's not my question, Brad. This is the question from all our people.
So this is my speculation, but I think Zelensky needed to argue loudly and publicly for security guarantees if he wants any hope of the Ukrainian people eventually accepting a ceasefire without security guarantees, which, let's face it, Trump is probably going to impose upon them. So Zelensky, he had his public meeting, and for 40 minutes, right from the beginning, it was the first thing he said, and then he repeatedly after that brought up security guarantees that had absolutely nothing to do with the economic deal he was actually there to sign. And Trump seemed okay with that. He was in diplomatic mode. He was taking it. Look how Trump reacted when Zelensky flat out contradicted his absolute favourite talking point about Europe.
They are our friends and they are our very supportive partners. They really gave a lot, Mr. President. They did.
They gave a lot, but they gave much less.
No.
Much less.
No. No.
No. Okay.
They're like a comedy duo.
Buddies.
It's pretty friendly. And Zelensky, he was being diplomatic as well. This is how Zelensky reacted when Trump completely dismissed his security guarantees argument at one point. Just watch his face here.
I don't think you're going to need much security. I think once this deal gets done, it's over. Russia's not going to want to go back, and nobody's going to want to go back. When this deal ends, I really believe this deal is going to be over.
He was being quite restrained, but then I think Zelensky did overstep just a little. It was when a diplomatic Trump, yet again, defended Zelensky's clothing after that stupid suit question from Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend, and Zelensky implied that Putin had walked all over Trump.
And I do like your clothing, by the way.
Yeah, really?
Even though I think he's a great guy, by the way. But I don't know if you two like each other. But you know what? I think he's dressed.
I like this guy. I don't know.
I think he's dressed beautifully.
So I have more. I have more serious things than answer on such questions. I will answer on more serious questions if I can. Just ceasefire will never work because I'm like a president. I have this experience, and not only me. Ukraine before my presidency, from the 2014, Putin broken 25 times. 25 times he broken his own signature. 25 times he broken ceasefire.
But he never broke to me. He never broke to me.
No, you were the president. You were the president during.
He never broke to me.
In 2016, you've been the president, Mr. President.
After that, Trump became less playful, but he was still tolerant. He still took all the security guarantees talk over and over again until J.D. Vance inserted himself into the event right at the end. Now, Vance has never been a friend of Ukraine. This is Vance a couple of days before Russia invaded Ukraine back in 2022.
I think it's ridiculous that we're focused on this border in Ukraine. I got to be honest with you, I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or another.
Don't think Zelensky doesn't know about Vance's views, right? So then Vance pipes up. To begin with, he was just defending Trump, and Zelensky then just replied with his usual security guarantees argument yet again. But rather than letting Zelensky do that like Trump had been, Vance decided instead to escalate. And he actually attacked Zelensky in response. And you played that before, John. Of course, Given Zelensky was presumably thinking of his Ukrainian audience, he had to respond. He couldn't just take it. And before you know it, they were openly squabbling. Trump had lost control of his own event. Throw in some language misunderstanding as well. I don't think Trump understood entirely what Zelensky was saying. And that sent him into Hulk mode, leaving the Ukrainian ambassador looking like this.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire? I want a ceasefire. With guarantees. Because you get a ceasefire faster than an agreement. Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
So I think Zelensky was playing an understandable but risky game, that whole presser. Yet he was getting away with it until Vance threw a bomb in there.
Yeah, if Trump was the Hulk, JD was the gamma rays turning him that way. Meanwhile, Trump supporters then lined up to blame Zelensky with a litany of complaints against him.
Coming to the Oval Office, with the body language, the shaking of head, the kind of the arms crossed, we found it incredibly disrespectful.
I've never seen anything like President Zelensky's behavior there. He berated and interrupted his host and instead of expressing gratitude.
And I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelensky again.
Wow, Lindsey Graham has sure changed his tune in the space of 2 weeks.
You've taken our weapons and you've kicked their ass. And I'm very proud to have you as our ally.
Although, truth be known, Lindsey is pretty good at changing his mind.
I think Donald Trump is a political car wreck. And people slow down and look at the wreck, but they eventually move on.
Love that clip. In fact, the only thing that Lindsey has not changed in the last 10 years is that tie.
That's a good guess.
He loves that tie. Meanwhile, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov sounded quite chuffed about all of this, telling state media that the Trump administration is, quote, rapidly changing all foreign policy configurations and it, quote, largely aligns with our vision. Yes, we noticed that too, Dmitry. Zelensky then left Washington for London with a hastily convened meeting of European leaders, and the contrast could not have been starker. Sir Keir Starmer walking up Downing Street to literally embrace Zelensky. King Charles then welcomed the Ukrainian leader to his private residence at Clarence House. So, after all of that in the last few days, then came an olive branch via Elon Musk's social media site X. Zelensky tweeting, "I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership." He announced a plan for the release of prisoners and truce in the sky, ban on missiles, long-range drones, bombs on energy and other civilian infrastructure, and a truce in the sea immediately. But then the possible catch, if Russia will do the same. And then the almost apology. "We do really value how much America has done to help Ukraine." So I guess a rhetorical peace offering.
I guess the question is Trump going to accept this? Because until that tweet, the administration had been privately communicating that they wanted a public apology from Zelensky, which, as you say, that is definitely not. I guess we'll find out whether the administration meant that or not.
Yeah, I think maybe they didn't really mean it, because then came the first reports that the US and Ukraine are planning to sign the minerals deal after all. So with all of that going on, there was a lot of interest in what President Trump would say in his address to Congress. Would he have a final deal to announce or another diplomatic bombshell to drop on everyone? Well, in the end, it was a little bit of an anticlimax. We got a long-winded, warmed-over campaign rally with half the crowd, the Democrats, sitting there stony-faced, holding up signs saying false. Still, Trump revelled in having this captive audience. He went on and on. It took him a full hour and a half to even mention Ukraine, which was already, for the history-minded, longer than any such congressional speech by a president in history. He smashed it. And Trump then revealed that Zelensky has sent him a letter, which ended up sounding an awful like Zelensky's tweet.
I appreciate that he sent this letter, just got it a little while ago. Simultaneously, we've had serious discussions with Russia and have received strong signals that they are ready for peace. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be beautiful? It's time to stop this madness. It's time to halt the killing. It's time to end this senseless war.
With all of that in mind, let's get some expert analysis from Steven Pifer. He's the former United States Ambassador to Ukraine. Mr. Ambassador, The last 24 hours or so, it's been a whirlwind. We had the US pausing their military assistance to Ukraine. We had Zelensky offering a partial ceasefire of sorts. Now it seems, according to these reports and those emails and letters, that the minerals deal is probably back on. Don't tell me that this chaotic process is actually working.
Well, I'm not sure that it is. I actually think that we could have had this without all of the drama on Friday. Quite frankly, it seems to me that Friday there was something of a setup, an ambush for the Ukrainian president that derailed things. Now I think you've seen that President Zelensky is trying to basically hold out an olive branch, rebuild that relationship, including by saying he's prepared to sign the agreement on rare earth minerals.
Now, you say you thought it might have been an ambush, Ambassador, but by who and for what reason?
Well, I've watched the recording. It seemed to me it was by the vice president. Whether or not that was coordinated with the president in advance or not, I mean, I quite frankly have never seen a foreign visitor, particularly a foreign visitor who's the leader of a partner country, treated more rudely in the White House. It was also bizarre that this was a press full spray. When I worked at the White House in the Clinton administration, those would be about 4 minutes long. You brought the press in, they took pictures, they asked a couple questions and out. This thing went 50 minutes. And it cut into time for discussions that really should have taken place behind closed doors.
So was the truly unusual part that this all happened in front of the cameras? Do these kinds of disagreements happen behind closed doors?
Sometimes conversations behind closed doors can get pretty candid, as diplomats say. But I think there could have been a discussion. And some of the points of contentious, I think, had Zelensky had a chance to explain. I mean, Zelensky, I think, was trying to say, look, I don't want a standalone ceasefire by itself. Ukrainians have a perfectly good reason for that. They've had dozens of ceasefires with Russia from 2014 until 2021 in Donbass and eastern Ukraine. The Russians regularly violated them. The Russians used those ceasefires to regroup and rebuild forces. And the Ukrainians never got a single square meter of territory back on the other side of the ceasefire line. So what Zelensky was saying is he wants something more. That's what I think that you saw coming out of the conversation that Zelensky had with European leaders and the Canadian Prime Minister on Sunday. And that may create now a basis for re-engaging.
There seems to be constant confusion to me between the economic deal and the ceasefire. The economic deal, that's a forerunner for the ceasefire, but it's just the ceasefire that Zelensky's insisting on security arrangements for. Is that right? Or am I misunderstanding something?
Well, I actually think Zelensky would like a broader settlement than just a ceasefire. And he sees, I think, this as sort of a package. I believe he came to Washington and he was hoping to use the attraction of the agreement on American access to Ukrainian raw earth minerals to get President Trump to make some lean forward on a security commitment for Ukraine. I mean, here's the problem I think Zelensky faces. Zelensky said back at the end of 2024, he was prepared to concede that Ukraine would not use military force to try to regain the occupied territories. But he also said, I want a security guarantee. I want NATO membership for that. You know, what Zelensky is trying to do is get an agreement now where he may have to do something that will be very painful for him and for Ukrainians, which is to accept the loss of some territory. But he wants to have a security guarantee so he has insurance that 3 years down the road, after Vladimir Putin has replenished his forces, there's not another attack on Ukraine. I think that's what he's pushing for here.
Ambassador, you talked about Europe's response, but aren't they now doing exactly what Donald Trump wants them to do, to take the security burden off the United States and American taxpayers and take responsibility for their own defence?
Well, I think you see the Europeans on one sense, they need to do more. There's talk now in Europe about raising defence spending to say 3 to 3.5%. That's a good thing. But again, that conversation was taking place, before the blow up in the White House. I think Europeans have come to recognize that they face a serious Russian threat. And so again, I think this could have handled in a way that would have been satisfying to President Trump, that Europe was beginning to do more without, some of the drama that we've seen in the past several days. What I think Europe now, though, wants to do, though, is work. And President Macron of France and Prime Minister Starmer of Britain, I think they've probably served some role as an intermediary to try to restore the relationship between the White House and Zelensky. they've talked about the British and the French and others perhaps making troops available to be on the ground in Ukraine to help implement an agreement. That's something that the United States is looking for, but there may be a sticking point, which is that the British have said they want to have some American backing. That may not necessarily be a requirement to have U.S. troops on the ground as part of that force, but some link to the United States, in part politically, so that the United States is involved in the guarantee to Ukraine, but also there may just be some capabilities like intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance that Europe is dependent on the United States for.
Ambassador Steven Pifer, thanks for being with us on Planet America.
Okay, take care now.
Tonight on Jerry Springer International Diplomacy Edition. Putin invaded my country and I need money.
Hey, welcome to the show. My guests today say they're all at war. Let's meet Donald.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to have President Zelenskyy of Ukraine.
If you could work on your clothing, you'd be all there.
I do like your clothing.
Now, he says you're dishonest with all the people you're taking the money from.
No.
No. So you didn't get your half of whatever. How much money was it?
We gave you $350 billion.
He says he's sick of being picked on. Do you feel a little bit bad?
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. You're gambling with World War III.
Oh.
You're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing.
I'm thankful because you chose our show.
This is going to be great television, I will say that.
Tune in next week for more political punch-ups on Jerry Springer.
How's the Russia investigation going?
Anyway, just about out of time, Chaz. But before we go, let's just correct the record because the truth is out there. Now, time and time again, this is how much Donald Trump claims America has given to Ukraine.
Biden made a deal. He put in $350 billion. And I thought it was a very unfair situation.
Now, Trump also claims that unlike the Europeans, the United States has simply given Ukraine all of this money. It's not a loan that has to be repaid, and that's how he's justified this grab for rare earth mineral revenue. But in fact, the majority of European support has been in the form of aid. Just 35% of European money is made up of loans. Fact checkers say that the US and Europe have also provided roughly the same amount of military aid, while the Europeans have actually provided more non-military aid than the United States has. And while the United States has made fewer loans as an overall proportion, they still represent 15% of US contributions. But Chaz, far from $350 billion, which is the number Trump keeps talking about in terms of American support, well, that's not even in the ballpark. The State Department's own official figures say it's roughly half that, $182 billion, and that's how much has been appropriated by Congress. It's not what's actually been paid yet. In fact, the German think tank, the Kiel Institute, estimates that to the end of last year, Europe had actually spent $138 billion. America had actually spent the equivalent of $119 billion in their support for Ukraine. So Trump is still squeezing Ukraine based on essentially a lie. Maybe they should just give him a big steaming pile of raw earth, by which I mean the kind that comes out of one of these, Chaz.
That would be raw. Probably worth noting as well before we go that out of that $180 billion you referred to before, $123 billion of those dollars went to the US Defense Department, not Ukraine. And $45 billion of those dollars were used to replace the old equipment that America handed down to Ukraine to replace with shiny, better equipment for America. In fact, America has only provided $30 billion worth of direct budgetary assistance for Ukraine. Now, I don't know what's loaned, what's been spent, whatever. In terms of cold, hard cash, not much.
No, not a lot. That is all we have for this week's Planet America. Hope you can join us at the same time next week or any time from 9 p.m. on ABC iView, YouTube and Facebook.
And Planet America's Weekend Edition is on Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on ABC News, also on iView and online. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.